Good evening, Matador family, and thank you all for taking time out of your very busy schedules to join me. I first want to start by just sharing how great of a first 6 weeks of school we have had in Seguin ISD. It has been the smoothest start to the school year that I've had here in Seguin, and I have to attribute that to everyone just really coming together to ensure that our schools and classrooms, our teachers, our students were ready. So thank you all so much for your continued support. And again, thank you for taking the time to join us this evening. I do apologize for the late start, but we have had some technical difficulties with the link that has been shared. So I wanted to give additional time for people to log on and have access to the correct link. Today's presentation is going to solely focus on Bond 2022. Because that is only weeks away, it is going to be very important that you all are informed as to what that bond proposal is going to entail. So this evening, we are going to talk about Bond 2022 and how we got to this point where we are going out to our voters to seek approval for the almost $140 million for facility, technology, safety, security upgrades. So what all is part of this bond referendum? We are going to go through that list here shortly, but I do want to start by just sharing how we got to the point where we are going out to our voters. It started with a group of 30 community members, business professionals, parents, and staff who were invited to participate on a facilities committee during the summer of 2022. And I do want to just express my appreciation to those 30 community members and other stakeholders who came together and dedicated numerous hours to really look at our facility study, our demographic data, and really just to understand the needs as it relates to safety and security. The committee received information on current and projected growth trends that are outlined in a demographic study conducted by School District Strategies. The last demographic study that we had was done in the 2017 to 2018 school year. At that time, the demographic study didn't show any growth happening in the school district. We were projected to remain relatively flat as we have for a number of years. And so this committee looked at the latest demographic study that was recently conducted, and it looked very different. And I'm going to go through that shortly. The committee also researched and analyzed the district's facility needs in accordance with the 2019 Long Range Facilities Needs Plan and the current Seguin ISD strategic plan. Back during the 2017 to 2018 school year, we had a facility study conducted by the Texas Association of School Boards, and they came and assessed every facility in our district and made recommendations as to whether renovations were going to be appropriate, perhaps a replacement, or other upgrades. For example, one of the recommendations for the stadium was a replacement, and we now have the new Matador Stadium. So this facilities committee that met looked at that facility study, as well as looked at the long range facilities plan that was created by the first long range facilities committee that started meeting back in 2018 during the 2018 to 2019 school year. And what that facilities committee did is they prioritized the long list of facilities needs that we had and identified them or categorized them into tiers. And the most critical tier 1, a significant portion of those items were addressed in Bond 2019, with the remaining being addressed in this bond. And so the committee took all of that information, had discussion, made decisions as to what should be prioritized with this bond. But the new considerations that were not part of the conversation back in 2018, 2019 were the fact that the school district is now experiencing growth. The demographic study shows that the school district's enrollment could reach 10,000 within 8 to 10 years. And the other component that wasn't a factor 3 years ago was safety and security, which has become front and center of everything we do, not just in response to Uvalde, but other recent events that have occurred at schools, not just across Texas, but across the nation. And so while the facilities committee was meeting, we were also meeting with the safety task force that also met over the course of the summer and made recommendations as to how we could enhance the safety and security at our facilities. And so the decision was made to include a significant portion of dollars towards safety and security, as at least as of yet, the state has not allocated funds to support our current needs. For example, with the growing school district from January to July 2022, new single-family residential permits in Seguin are at almost 600, and that is July data, with that number continuing to go up. The committee's recommendations were unanimously approved by our Board of Trustees on July 19th, 2022 for a November 8th, 2022 bond package. So what all is included in this package, which totals out to, trying to navigate this and speak at the same time, which totals out to just under $140 million. The number one item on that list is safety and security enhancements that are at $15 million. So what would that include? If we're looking at safety and security enhancement, what does that include? Well, the safety and security task force made some recommendations as to what we needed to do to ensure that we had measures in place to prevent a tragic event such as the one that occurred in Uvalde. We'd be looking at additional fencing around the perimeters of our school buildings, additional cameras in areas that currently don't have cameras, both inside and at the exteriors of our buildings, with technology to support that. Weapon detection devices, especially in areas that have large numbers of people coming in to a facility, for example, at the football stadium, at the Performing Arts Center, at the high school for a band concert, at the entryway of our high school. There is new technology that is able to scan numerous people at one time, because it would be almost impossible to have weapon detectors that look at one person at a time. So we'd be looking at that technology, which comes at a significant cost. So those are some examples. The second one is a construction of a new McQueeney Elementary School at $54 million. The third would be additions and renovations at Barnes Middle School at $24.3 million. An agricultural science facility at just under $9 million, transportation facility expansion at $3.8 million, a baseball and softball complex at $7.5 million. Please keep in mind that this would be a separate proposition. Everything else on this bond measure would be on Proposition 1, and the baseball softball would be part of Proposition 2. New legislation makes it mandatory that school districts separate athletic facilities like the baseball, softball, something that didn't have to take place back in 2019 when everything was on one proposition. The seventh item is land purchase for a future third middle school at $2 million. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we can push that need down the road a little bit, but it's important to have that land secured for that third middle school. As values are continuing to increase, we're looking at being proactive and finding that land now, because that need is going to come to us down the road. Then we're looking at various campus projects, for example, roof replacements at almost $10 million, plumbing and HVAC at $3 million, updated buses, additional buses at $2.5 million, and technology infrastructure. Now, the one that I skipped on purpose is furniture. Now, with the new high school and the new AJB, those campuses have or will have brand new furniture. Ball Early Childhood Center just recently had furniture upgrades in all of their classrooms. One of the ideas that came from the facilities committee, especially from teachers serving, was that there was a strong need to replace our furniture in our buildings. The furniture in many of our buildings has been the same furniture for decades. And so we are looking at enhancing the teaching and learning environment for our teachers. From the teacher perspective that was shared with that committee, I want to have an improved working environment and teaching environment. I want it to be competitive, just as competitive as other districts. I also want to make sure that we are able to recruit teachers because of our working environment. And currently, we see that as a challenge when we are trying to compete for teachers with school districts that have newer facilities and more state-of-the-art infrastructure inside. With the new McQueeney Elementary School, I do want to point out that it would not be located in McQueeney, so it would be a name change. But this is just an idea of what McQueeney could look like. This is not an actual rendering. And yes, it would be likely a two-story building because it would need to accommodate about 800 students. We would be looking at moving away from a school that serves only 250 to 300 students because it's fiscally responsible and more fiscally efficient to do that as well. The two-story would reduce the footprint for the land needed. And this campus would also allow us to be able to take that next step to finish the renovations at Jefferson and to replace Weinert Elementary down the road. The ability to be able to accommodate additional students would allow us to possibly rezone or find a home temporarily for students who would be attending one of those campuses, because they would have to be closed so that the construction could be completed or started. And so this would afford us that opportunity to do that. But also keep in mind that a lot of the growth that's happening in Seguin ISD is happening on that side of the school district. So there is certainly going to be a need for an elementary school that can accommodate that growth. We are currently in the final stages of negotiations for the land for that site that was part of the 2019 bond. We allocated $1 million for that land, but as you all know, values have increased significantly. So we are looking at a sum that is more than that $1 million. It is still in close proximity to the current McQueeney Elementary School, so it would still be convenient for many of those families who live in McQueeney. The second item is related to Barnes Middle School, its additions and renovations. If you have ever experienced the car drop-off or pickup lines at Kinnicky and Barnes, you probably describe it as somewhat of a nightmare. And so what we are looking to do to increase parking and improve traffic flows, but to also make it much more safe, is to design it very similar to AJBs, to provide ample parking for staff, but to also provide ample parking for staff and families when we hold events at that campus. But most importantly, it would improve the traffic flow for that campus and improve safety. Barnes Middle School is currently at capacity, and keep in mind that that middle school was originally planned to be a 7th and 8th grade facility. We now have over 800 students at Barnes Middle School, and there is a need for additional space in the form of classrooms to accommodate that growth and to support the expanding CTE and fine arts programming at that campus. Currently, there are challenges with the current programming in place with the space that is not available. So we would be looking at a new band, a new mariachi, new choir classrooms, industrial art classroom, theater classroom, cafeteria renovations. Currently, the cafeteria is equipped for about 200, 250 students. There are many more students that are going into that cafeteria at one time to have lunch, and it is also a safety hazard. And so we're looking to provide additional common area space to that campus. On top of the cafeteria renovation and expansion, we would be looking at library renovations to accommodate a campus that would have many more students than they currently have. And so we'd be looking at renovating that library space and expanding it, and also including some additional art labs. What this would do is increase the capacity of Barnes Middle School to hold almost 1,000 students. And with AJB's construction, once it's completed, we will be able to accommodate about 1,000 students. And so that would hold off the need for a third middle school for a little longer, but that need is still going to come. The next item is an agricultural science facility at $8.9 million. Seguin ISD has not had an ag science facility, and for many years we have lost students to other school districts who have the facilities to be able to be competitive and to accommodate their students who are interested in ag science. And so what we are looking to do is to have a barn that is almost at 5,000 square feet, and the animal facility at almost 24,000 square feet, with the space available for our students to practice showing. What this would do is not only provide our current ag students the facility to be able to store animals, house animals, and store feed, it would also allow us the opportunity to expand the programming, because there are many students who are interested in ag science, but they are unable to participate because they do not have the space to hold animals. Currently, the students who participate either have the space. Many of our ag science families are kind enough to allow other students to store their animals and feed on their property. And what this would allow us to do is to accommodate all students who are interested in ag. But it would also be an educational space for students from pre-K on to be able to go and learn about agricultural science and begin to think about how they could possibly have a future in ag science, and begin to pique their interest in such an important industry in the part of Texas that we live. And so it would not only be a space where our students could go and learn, but it would also be a place where students can begin to start having an interest in something that could be very rewarding to participate in secondary school, but a very rewarding career. The next item is a transportation facility at $3.8 million. Currently, our transportation facility cannot house all of our transportation staff. So we would be looking at adding additional space to be able to accommodate our staff, all of our staff, while also keeping in mind that this department will grow in the future. Currently, we do not have sufficient parking for our transportation staff. And as a growing district that encompasses almost 400 square miles, as we grow, the need for additional buses is going to be important. And so ensuring that we have enough space for our buses, enough space for parking, and enough space for our staff to be able to come together and to meet. The next item, which is on a separate proposal, is a baseball and softball complex at $7.5 million. As many of you all know, our softball complex is in need of some TLC. All you need to do, and if you haven't, I encourage you to pass by. There's minimal seating for spectators. And so we would be looking at, for both the baseball and softball, ensuring that there is enough seating for all spectators. There would be shared restrooms and concessions to where we could hold simultaneous events. We currently do not have a baseball facility of our own. We are currently utilizing the city's facility, the Smoky Joe property, which we do our best to maintain, but it is not our property. And we are looking to be competitive with other school districts by having a facility of our own at the high school. Our baseball students lose a lot of time practicing because they have to load equipment onto transportation, travel to Smoky Joe's, practice, pack equipment up, load it up, and transport themselves back to the campus. So we lose out on a lot of time to practice. In addition, we recently surveyed our middle school students to gauge their interest in baseball and softball. And if we are looking to expand that programming, we've got to have the facility in our district that can accommodate that. And one of the disadvantages that we have had is that we're unable to start enhancing the skills of our middle school students. And so for many students, they don't start until they get to high school. So we are at a competitive disadvantage because of that lack of opportunity that they have. But also, we don't have our own baseball softball complex. Back in 2019, I had shared that our ultimate goal was to complete the high school project. We have a brand new high school, state-of-the-art high school that we are proud of. We have the brand new Matador Stadium. We have the Gutierrez gym. We have updated tennis courts. The last piece to that puzzle, or pieces, are baseball and softball. This is to give you an idea of how it would look in relation to the high school and Gutierrez. You can see the Gutierrez gym and the high school with you can see a part of the track as well. So how does this impact taxpayers? Last school year, 21-22, our tax rate per $100 valuation was $1.28. The tax rate was recently adopted by our Board of Trustees, and it went down 4 cents to $1.24. Should this bond referendum be approved by voters, we are asking you to approve a 2-cent tax increase per $100 valuation. That would move the tax rate back up to $1.26, which is still lower than the tax rate was during the 21-22 school year. Back in 2019, we also went out to our voters and shared that we were looking at a 5-cent tax increase per $100 valuation. But because of all of the growth that is happening within the Seguin ISD boundaries, we only went up 2.5 cents. So I want you to keep that in mind, because it doesn't appear that the growth seems to be slowing down. So how does it look for an average taxpayer? If your home is valued at $100,000, you are looking at about a $20 increase to your annual tax bill. If your home is valued at $250,000, you're looking at about a $50 increase annually to your tax bill. However, if you are over 65, you fall under the over 65 homestead exemption, which means you will not be impacted by this tax increase. So how do you vote? Where do you vote? First, you need to make sure that you're registered to vote prior to October the 11th, 2022. In order to vote in the election, you have to reside within the Seguin ISD boundaries. Votes may be cast at any early voting or election day polling site, and there are no precinct-specific polling sites during early voting or on election day. Early voting begins on October the 24th. And I'm not going to go through the list, but you can read those early voting dates, but it does begin on October the 24th, which is around the corner. Again, if you are interested in voting, and I encourage you to exercise your right to vote, please be registered by October the 11th. There are going to be multiple voting locations during early voting in close proximity to Seguin. You have the Seguin ISD Administration Building and the Seguin Elections Office. On election day, on November the 8th, polling locations are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And there are multiple voting locations for election day in close proximity to Seguin. You have the Seguin ISD Administration Building. You have the TLU Alumni Student Center. You also have Our Lady of Guadalupe Church. So there are multiple polling locations for election day that should be convenient to our voters. Just as we did back in 2019, we will be putting in place a new bond oversight committee, and they will serve in an advisory capacity to the Seguin ISD board and administration to ensure that project work tracks to the priorities and planning of the potential 2022 bond projects. So if this bond referendum is approved, we will put in place a bond oversight committee. Trustees will have the opportunity to nominate 2 constituents who reside within their respective district boundary and are willing to work collaboratively with leadership. So there will be about 12 to 14 trustee nominated members and 2 to 4 superintendent nominated community members and 4 district staff. So if you are interested in serving on the 2022 bond oversight committee, feel free to email your board member or email me, and we'll be glad to put you down as someone who is interested. And at this point, we have a minute or two for any questions that you may have that we can address either live or in the chat. Thank you all so much for joining today. I hope you have a restful and relaxing evening. And before we close, I just want to say it's a great day to be a Matador. Thank you.